adab. They have the same commitment to knowledge. They're very knowledge-based people. And they study the fiqh. They study. You'll see later, inshallah, with in the Qawa'id, where he talks about the requirement of fiqh. You cannot learn tasawwuf without fiqh. Shaykh ibn al-Habib in Morocco, who was a great Shaykh of the 20th century in Morocco, he made it a requirement to learn Ibn Ashir before he would take a student, which is a baseline knowledge of your outward religion. So, anyway, if you know, good company is important. Sahba, suhbat, I think they say in Turkish. Suhbat, yeah, suhbat, yeah, is very important. Suhbat. Come on, just started. All right, so we're going to do the Qadiya now. So this is just some notes here. Hukm in Arabic is judgment. Hakamtu ala shay. To judge something is to make a hukm. The qadi yaqdi. And that's why qadiya proposition is called a qadiya. It's also called a hukm. Because the qadi is the one yusdiru hukman. So the hukm is a judgment. Linguistically it means to prevent. So mana'a, hakama means to prevent something. Hence a ruler is called al-hakim because he prevents justice. Any horse people here? Any riders? You know what a hokama is? Hokama? Huh? It's an English term that they use if you grew up riding. A hokama is a type of bridle. And it comes from hakima because it was introduced into the West through Andalusia. So the Arabs brought it to the West. So a hakima is it's a way of controlling the horse. So, and that's why technically it is a judgment or logical proposition expressed in a sentence. So less than a sentence is a term. And a term is an oral expression of a concept. A concept is the understanding of the mind of something, right, in the world. And so it is an assertion or negation. So it's either mujib or salib. And you know, you'll see mujiba and mujiba, and they're both correct. But my teacher, some of the books have mujiba. My teacher, Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya, said mujiba is, in terms of rhetoric, it's more appropriate for because one is yaslub and the other is yujib. So salaba yaslubu fahuwa salibun, and ojaba yujibu fahuwa mujibun. So mujiba. So it could be either one. You'll see both in the books. And Imam al-Bajuri in his commentary on the Sulam says that they're both correct, but he also argues what Shaykh Abdullah told me. So it's assertion or negation about a statement that is objective. Now, in Arabic, they divide statements into insha'iyya and khabariyya. In English, we talk about, you have a performative statement, which is ceremonial, right? Like, I dub thee knight, you know, I confer upon thee this diploma. That's a performative statement. And then you have a exclamatory, my God, unbelievable, exclamation mark, something like that. An exclamatory statement. And then you have an interrogative statement, like, where are you going tomorrow? And then you have an interrogative, and then you also have an what's that? No. Performative, exclamatory, interrogative, imperative. Thank you. So you have an imperative, like do this, don't do that. Right? And so, all those statements have nothing to do with propositions. The only sentence that is a proposition is a declarative sentence. It's a khabariya. It's a khabar that's either true or false. That's its definition. And that's the only sentence. So, it asserts the unity of two terms or simple apprehensions, one called the subject, that's called the mawdu', and the other the predicate, mahmud. It is synonymous with qadiya, right? So these are a hukm and a qadiya. وحكمنا العقلي قضية بلا وقف على عادة ووضع جلاء. Ibn Ashur says, وحكمنا العقلي, our rational proposition or judgment is a proposition قضية بلا وقف على عادة ووضع جلاء. It's not empirical and it's not revelation. So it's a rational. It's done through reason. That's how we arrive at it. We make a judgment in our mind. And then that's expressed in a proposition. So the actual judgment takes place in the mind, and the expression is called a qadiya. And that's why a qadiya is like a term. It's public domain. You can say the same thing in many different languages. So the qadiya is the same if you say al-khashyatu ra'sul hikmah. Awe of God is the foundation of wisdom. Or bidayatul hikmah if you want the biblical version of it. That awe of God is the foundation of wisdom. That's a proposition. But if I say it in Arabic or English, those are just the linguistic expressions of the same qadiya. All right? So it's like a term. And you call the predicate the mahmul because it's what's being humila alayh. So it's what's being stated. Predicare is Latin to state. And so the mawdu' is the subject, the mahmul is the predicate. Now what's important is in a proposition you can't reverse it. All right? And when we get into aqs, you'll see situations where you can, but generally you can't, it's not an equation. So you can say, if you say for instance, Allahu was salam, God is salam, which doesn't literally mean peace in Arabic. It means whole, right? That there's no parts to God. Or salima min al-uyub, there's no blemishes in God. But if we say God is peace, you cannot say peace is God in meaning that peace in the world or something is divine, unless you mean peace as salam as a name of God. As-salam huwa ismullah. But salam is not God. He's not limited by salam. But that's one aspect of God's nature, is as-salam. And then you have that which is the essence of a thing. In Greek it's called ontos. And in Arabic, probably closer to ontos is kainuna. It can also refer to the essential substance, johar. Now a johar, when we talk about johar, it's not being in the all-encompassing sense of the word. The substance is always particularized. So when we talk about being, we're talking about being as kainuna, right? When we're talking about the johar, everything has a johar. So the glass is a substance. It has a johar. And that's the essence of the thing. And then it has the accidents. And as you tear apart the accidents need to exist in essences. But they're not. What's interesting about accidents, as you pull them apart, the johar begins to disintegrate. And so the relationship is almost a mystical relationship between the two. Now, a lot of modern people deny essences and only assert accidents. But the accident it has to be qa'im in the jawhar. واسم العالم ما سوى الديان من نوعي الأعراض والعيان. Alam is the name for everything other than God, and it means the two parts, the accidents and the essences. وَلَمْ يُحَقِّقْ غَيْرَ دَيْنِ قِسْمُ وَكُلُّ مَا أُلِفَ فَهُوَ الْجِسْمُ. And nothing other than these two things have been determined to exist. And what has ta'leef, what has composite parts, is called a body. So it's made up of jawhar and accidents. And then the a'rad, are the accidents. So the arad or accidents is that quality which adheres to a subject but opposed to a property. It neither constitutes its essence nor does it necessarily flow from it. So you can have the arad lazim, the arad mufariq, you can have am khas. It can refer to one haqiqa, one reality, or it can refer to more than one. Like mutanaffis refers to the potential to breathe, but it also refers to the actual breathing of the human being. So that's a arad am. So according to the Asha'ira, an accident has no independent existence, but can only do so in a substance. It inheres in a substance. It's the proof also that substances are not eternal. That's the proof, because we know that the accident is temporal. And because it resides, it inheres in a substance, the substance has to also be created. And that's a logical argument. According to the Asha'ira, an accident cannot exist in another accident, but only in a substance. But no substance can ever exist apart from its qualities, the sifat, or accidents, a'rad. Hence, the substance being inseparable from its accidents, like the latter, is also merely transitory, has only a momentary existence. Everything that exists thus consists of mere transitory units. They're called jawahir al-fard, known as indivisible atoms. So not the modern sense of an atom that has protons, neutrons, electrons. It's something more like a quark or a neutrino or a positron or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying those are what it is, but it's an indivisible part. It can't be split. Or strings in the strings theory. Hence the given these atoms have a momentary existence, they must be recreated in every instant by the will of God. Al-Mubdi wal-Mu'id, the initiator and then the one who causes it to come back. And then you have Qadiya. You have three types of Qadiya. So you have Daruriya, Jaiza, and Mustahila. So a Qadiya Daruriya is a necessary proposition in which the predicate is universally and necessarily true of the subject and can never be otherwise. So a Qadiya Daruriya means that it has to be the case. It cannot be otherwise. The intellect, وَمَا أَبَى الْعَقْلَ الْمُحَالِ. If the intellect rejects it completely, then it's impossible. It's inconceivable. I mean, I prefer inconceivable to impossible in Kalam, because impossible is a problematic word, because it's about qudra. And even though in Western logic they use impossible generally for Mustahil, but the Mustahil is more really the inconceivable in relation to God. It's the impossible in relation to other things. Because not everything's possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ قَادِرٌ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. He's capable of doing everything. And in that way, I mean, some have argued, like Ibn Hazm, that if he wanted to create a square triangle, he could. So, obviously, this logic would not allow for that to be possible. And this is how he created this world. So from that point of view, this logic holds up, definitely. And this is the logic that he's given us. It's definitely the Sharia. I think some of the people of Tasawwuf would argue that at the Haqiqah level, you can't apply this logic to God. But these are big debates in our community. So. And generally the Ash'ari tradition has been very committed to this. Imam Al-Ghazali was very committed to this. and it certainly is very convincing to the intellect, because the intellect was designed in a way that conforms to this logic. And that's why this logic is not Greek, it's not Japanese, it's not Chinese, it's not Indian, it's not American, it's not Arab, it's universal. These are universal truths that the intellect recognizes. So the Qadiya daruriyya, a necessary proposition. So a Qadiya daruriyya is a triangle must have three sides. That's daruri. That proposition is a Qadiya daruriyya, because you cannot imagine a triangle without three sides, because it wouldn't be a triangle if it had three sides. And they have to be three connected sides, right? So, or the circumference of a circle must be equidistant from its center, right? Or it wouldn't be a circle, it would be some other orb, right? And then the Jaiz is what the intellect, it does not negate its impossibility or its necessity, right? It's either or. It could exist or it could not. It's contingent. So the Jaiz is something, it could exist, it's not impossible, and it's not necessary. It's neither of those. It resides in the middle. It's something that could exist or couldn't exist. For instance, the world is Jaiz. We could imagine the world not existing. Difficult, but we could. We could imagine a world without Buddhism. Difficult, but we could imagine it. We could imagine a world without zebras. Because all of these things are mumkin al-wujud. They're all possible. They're Jaiz. And then the Mustahil is what the intellect cannot conceive of as being necessarily or conceivably possible, such as a four-sided triangle. That's Mustahil. As simple as that. It is Mustahil for us to conceive of a triangle that's a square, or a rectangle that's a square. And in Kalam, these are important concepts because that's basically the ilahiyat revolve around these three concepts. What's wajib lillah, yajib ullah al-wujub, wal-qidam, wal-baqa, wal-ghina mataqu'am, wa-khurfu li kharqi bila mithal. These are all the things that are wajib for Allah. The salbiyat, sifat al-nafsiyya. I think you're learning these things, right, with Ustad Omar. So you have the sifat al-wujudiyya, al-nafsiyya, and then you have the sarbiyat, right? And then you have the ma'ani and the ma'nawiyat. These are all related to the qualities. And then you have the mustahilat, which are the opposites. And then you have the jaizat, which is that he can do things or not do them. You know, if he wants to bring the world into existence, it's jaiz. If he doesn't, it's not, like that. So that's basically what a Qadiya is. Now, what's important about a Qadiya? A term is neither true nor false. A term is what? I know, it's a word, but what is it? Huh? It's a concept. What else? It's either clear or unclear. Most problems in communication are from unclear terms. So a term is either clear or unclear, and we learn the rules of definition, which enable us to use clear terms. If we use those rules of definition, right, it enables us to use clear terms. It should be coextensive, right? It should be clear. It should be literal. It should be brief, right? It shouldn't be negative and shouldn't be circular. So those are the rules. And the term, the definition that's complete is when you get the genus and the difference together, which gives you the species. That's the best definition that you can get. So terms are clear or unclear. Propositions are true or false. Now, there's a third type of proposition that just helps us out. If we divide them, right? You know, we learned division. What are the rules of division? Exclusive, right? Exhaustive. And you have one standard. Those are the three rules of division. So if we divide propositions into true and false, there's a third, which is unknown. Is that acceptable in terms of the rules of division? Why not? Good. So, did you get that? She got it. I'm proud of you. So, we use two standards, because known and unknown is one standard, and true and false is another standard. So if I say propositions are divided into true, false, and unknown, I'm using two standards, and that breaks one of my rules of division. But we cheat a little, because it's useful. All right? So that's accurate. So it's shorthand. It helps you when you determine what type of proposition it is. Because a proposition can be true and we know it's true. It can be false and we know it's false. But it can also be true or false and we haven't ascertained that yet. Right? Now, when we ask, the nice thing about our tradition is it makes very clear what truth is. It makes clear what truth is and where truth is. So where is truth? Where does it live? If you had to give it a house. I'm talking about logical truth. Where does truth reside? What's that? Where does truth reside?
And the essence?
What resides in the essence? In terms of how we understand essence? The mahiyya. What resides in the essence?
The concept?
It's the concept, right? So the concept is the essence. Where does truth reside? What's that?
A theophany or Asma al-Husna?
Okay, that's al-haq al-mutlaq. I'm talking about logical truth right now. No.
Is it in our fitra?
What's that?
Our fitra?
Is it what?
Our fitra?
Our fitra?
Yeah, our fitra.
Okay, what is truth? As Pontius Pilate said, right? What is truth? What is truth? What's the definition of truth? What is it? Our tradition has a very clear definition of it. What is truth? I actually said it in the first class or second class. Okay. Truth is what corresponds with reality. How do we articulate truth? In a proposition. So if you ask about the where of truth is in the proposition. The proposition is the house of truth. It's also the house of falsehood. But that's where truth resides. So when you're looking for truth, the address is Proposition Lane, in the city of proposition. Right? That's where it is. So when you go out searching for truth, that's what you're searching for. The place. Now, what is it? It's what corresponds with reality. So now we know where it is and what it is. Our tradition says truth is when one says about what is, it is, and one says about what is not, it is not. And falsehood is one says about what is, it is not, and what one says about what is not, that it is. That is truth, according to our tradition. So, when we say the Prophet is as-sadiq al-masduq, the truthful and the believable, he's not only speaking the truth, but it's believable what he's saying. What that means is, when he makes a statement, a proposition, it's a true proposition. He's as-sadiq al-amin. So if he said, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but the one true God, that's a proposition. It's either true or it's false, because every proposition is true or false. Right? If he said it, it's true, because he doesn't lie. And this is why our scholars were far more concerned about proving prophecy than they were about proving the existence of God. They spent far more energy on proving the truthfulness of the Prophet than they did on trying to prove that God exists. Because if you could prove that the Prophet was true and what he said was true, then we would have to believe in God. Because he said there's a God, there's a day of judgment, you're going to be raised up, and this is the reality. And he spoke in this language. He spoke in this language. He used language. He used analogy. The man who came to him and he said, Ya Rasulullah, idhni fi zina. Just let me fornicate. I like the religion, everything about it, except this one thing. He said, I just want to have my licentiousness. The Prophet ﷺ said, do you have a mother? Yes. Do you have a sister? Yes. Do you have an aunt? Yes. Would you want somebody to do that with them? No. So then he asked him. See, this is analogy. He's making him see the reality of his actions. It's using logic. And then he put his hand on his chest and made dua for him. So that's the that's the extra. And the man went out and he said, I went in there loving fornication more than anything. I came out, it was the most odious thing to me. That's transformation. It's logic and it's intellect and heart. And this is where Islam it's so powerful, because it's using both. It's using both modes of understanding. Because we have the intellectual understanding, but we also have heart understanding. And that's why some people have heart understanding without intellectual understanding. Those are common people that love Allah and His Messenger. They don't have proofs. Like the old woman who saw Fakhruddin al-Razi and all the people following him. And she said, who's that? He said, don't you know he has 70 proofs for the existence of God? And she said, if he didn't have 70 doubts, he wouldn't need 70 proofs. And so Fakhruddin, when he heard that, he said, alaykum bi iman al-ajaiz. Have the faith of old women. In other words, that's the real faith. It's in the heart. It's not in the intellect. But we need the intellect as well. And this is the power of Islam. It's got both these forces working. It's not this, all these secularist people in the West, they say religion's irrational. No, we don't say that. We say it's rational. We actually believe in rationality. Our tradition believes in rationality. We're committed to rationality. But we also believe in the supra-rational. We believe that there are more things in the heavens and the earth than in our philosophies. That the intellect has a limit. I saw a poster once that had these two babies in a womb. They were twins, and the caption, one of the babies says to the other baby, "Do you believe in mom?" Mm-hmm. And the other baby says, "Absolutely not. What's the proof for mom?" Have you ever seen Mom? And then he said, so I'm assuming you don't believe in life after Mom? Right? And that is our state. We're like that fetus. You know, the atheist is like that fetus in the womb that's denying. It's like we've always been in this room. Imagine it, seriously. We've always, since the time we were born in this room, same group of people, we've always been in this room. And one day, somebody comes through the door and says, what are you all doing here? And we're like, what do you mean? And we say, is there something other than here? This is like one tiny room in the midst of a vast world. You're in a place called Turkey. You should see Istanbul. I mean, it's much nicer than this room. You know, or Konya. You haven't even been outside to take a look at Konya. And we're like, what's Konya? No, that's what these people are like. These completely self-limiting people. All they believe is what they can see, feel, touch, taste, and hear. They have no concept of what's outside. And yet, they believe in things that they can't see, touch, taste, feel, or hear. They believe in, I mean, one of my teachers, Adler, he taught at University of Chicago. And he was a Thomist and I think he was a pretty formidable theologian. But he said he was once sitting with these nuclear physicists, and they were talking about these subatomic particles that could just be in one place and suddenly appear in another place without any motion between the two places. And he said, that's exactly how the scholastic described angels. He said they looked at him like he was stark raving lunatic. So they can believe in these things that they've never seen. They've never seen that. It's all theoretical. It's all done through mathematics. And yet they won't believe even in the possibility that maybe a prophet doesn't need mathematics to find out about things that we can't see, feel, hear, touch, or see. So this is what we're dealing with in the modern world. We're dealing with limitations, self-limitations that we impose on ourselves. So when you want to, so knowing where the truth is and what the truth is the easy part, but it's discovering the truth that's the hard part. That's the difficulty. And that is whether or not the proposition is true or false. And we have ways of determining the soundness of terms that are very solid. We have ways of determining the soundness of reasoning that are very solid. But determining the truth of propositions is the most difficult. It's where all the problems arise. And it's where all the arguments are and all the debates are. I mean, there's debates in definitions, and there can be some debates in logic and its validity, because skepticism is real and there are skeptics in the world. But generally, it's the propositions where people really have a hard time. That's where we flounder, falter, and fight also over. So just to put this now in a perspective, we have terms. Those are less than sentences. We have sentences. The sentences are either categorical sentences, declarative sentences, right? So you have a declarative sentence, and those fall into two categories, simple and compound. Simple and compound. When you use declarative sentences, the simple sentences are called Qadiya Hamliya. This is a categorical statement. And they fall into four types. There's only four. In logic, when you get into modal logic, you get different types, but that's a different type of logic. But in this type of logic, term logic, you have an A statement, an E statement, an I statement, and an O statement. And this comes from two Latin words. I'm talking Western logic. It comes from two Latin words, affirmo and nego, and it's basically the vowels in those. So affirmo is when you assert something, so it's a positive statement, and nego is a negative statement. So the A is a universal, where you're asserting something true about something. So you say, all men are mortal. Or we hold this truth to be self-evident. All men are created equal. All men are created equal. That's a proposition, right? What are the terms in there? Man and equal, right? So, what does men mean in that proposition? Okay, did they mean just males? They didn't, did they? I hope not. Yeah. So, yeah, all men. So men means males and females. So we know the definition. It's all of us, right? Rational animals. And then, so that's the comprehension. What's the extension? When they said all men. That means everybody, right? So it's distributed amongst all men. That's called a distributed. It's musawwara. It means all of them. There's no exceptions. All men are created equal. So created, I mean, if you put it in a logical form, you'd say all men are equal. Because in logic, you try to get rid of verbs other than the verb to be in English logic. And in Arabic logic, you make just a straightforward statement. Because you don't need the verb to be. So when you say all men are created equal, when you say equal, what does that mean? What does equal mean? First of all, what's that term? What is the definition of equal? What type of term is it? If you had to put it in those categories, what type of term is it? What's that? It's an arithmetic term, isn't it? So he's using an arithmetic term in an ethical statement. What's the problem with that? What's the problem with it? What's that? But equal means same, yeah. So all men are the same. Okay, but what's the problem with it? It's ambiguous, isn't it? It's definitely an equivocal term. Because first of all, it's really a metaphor, isn't it? I mean, or an analogy rather. He's taking an arithmetic concept and he's applying it in moral terms. So he's using it as a moral term. But what do you think he meant when he said all men are created equal? Are we all equal? I mean, Muhammad looks stronger than me. Like, I think if we had an arm wrestle, he would beat me. Right? I think I could beat Sarah. So we're not equal in strength, are we? What's he talking about? Equal in what? In rights. Okay, that's a good place to start. So that's probably what he meant. They have equal rights. They have equal rights. And what are those rights? He says, Thomas Jefferson, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So he's really talking about equality of rights. The Prophet ﷺ said, "An-nasu sawasiya ka-asnan al-misht." And I would argue he's the first person in human history ever to say that. I don't think anybody said it before him. Not Thomas Jefferson or anybody else. So the Prophet said, human beings are equal like the tongues of a comb, like the teeth of a comb. They're equal before the law. But they're not equal spiritually. Are they equal, those who know and those who don't know? So Allah says knowledge differentiates people. I was ordered to treat people in accordance with their mansila, with their stations. So the doctor, inna at-tabib wal mu'allima kilahuma la yanfa'ani idha huma lam yukrama. The Arabs say, the teacher and the doctor, they won't benefit you if you don't honor them. You go to the doctor and say, listen, stupid, I've got some symptoms here, and I'm a little worried about it. In your pea-brain mind, do you think you could find something that could help me? I mean, Do you think he's really going to help you or want to help you? He might if he's a very ethical person. He might give you some poison, right? And the teacher's the same thing. A teacher, they want to be honored. They don't want to be mistreated. That's why adab is so important with the teachers. So, you know, when we look at the four, we have the universal, which is all. All of something is stated about something. That's universal affirmative. So it's kulliya, mujiba. Universal and affirmative. So it asserts something about something and it's universal. And the first is distributed, it's musawwara. The second is undistributed. Because there's other things that, like if I say all men are mortal, do I mean they're the only ones that are mortal? No. So when I say all men, that means they're all men. But when I say mortal, it doesn't mean all mortal things. So you can't say all mortals are men. You can't reverse it. You can't say all mortals are men because horses are mortal. Right? And then you have the E statement, A-E, nego. And this is a universal negative statement. So no men are angels. No men are angels. All right? That's universal negative. And then and that's the strongest there, right? Because they're both distributed. So that's the strongest statement that you can make is when you negate like that, universal negation. Because that also means no angels are men, doesn't it? Right? If I say no men are angels, that means no angels are men. Do you see the distribution? It's musawwara. So it's a qadiya, saliba, and it's distributed. And then you say, you have an I statement, which is some. And in logic, you don't say few. When you get into modal logic, you can use these things. But in this type of logic, there's a benefit in reducing statements down to only 4. And you'll understand that when you get into syllogisms. And I'm hoping that you go on, because we're just scratching the surface. You know, logic, you can't learn it in 3 weeks. You know, I wish you could. I wish we all could. But it takes a while. And to get really good at it, it takes, you know, a good amount of time. At Zaytuna, they have 3 semesters of logic. And so that's enough to get a reasonable, I think, grounding in it. But you're not going to learn it in 3 weeks. But I'm hoping that you'll at least get a taste of it and hopefully want to go on and learn it, because it is a foundational science to our scholastic tradition. And I consider it really important in the time we're living, because there's so much sophistry out there. And if you don't have these tools, you can easily be fooled by people out there. So you always want to, you don't say a few, you say some. So some men are writers. Okay, so that is a mujiba juz'iyya. It's particular and it's positive. And then some men are not writers. So that's the O statement. So you have the A, E, I, and O. Those are the 4 logical statements. And whenever you take a proposition, you always want to put it into one of those 4 types. And that's tricky. It takes some practice to get it. Because if you have something like all men are created equal, you want to put that into that type of statement. So it would be all men are equal, like that. Now, you also have singular, the mushakhasa or the makhsusa. You have a singular statement. So you have universal, particular, and singular. The singular is like Socrates. So all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. That's a classic. It's called a barbara. It's each one of them is universal. Even though Socrates is a singular term, right? And the concept embodied in it is man. It's not Socrates, because you can't define an individual, right? You can't define an individual, because you can have the genus, but you can't have the fasl. What makes that individual unique to all other individuals? You can't. It'll either be properties or accidents, but they share the same thing, which is rationality. So you can't. But when you use a singular proposition, it's considered a universal in logic. So it means all Socrates is mortal. In other words, not just a part of him, the whole of Socrates is mortal. So it's used as a as universal. All right. So I was asked to talk a little bit about Ramadan. For those of you who have read a book I wrote, Caesarean Moonburst, I think you know my position, and that's the position of my teacher, Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya. It was the position of my teachers in Mauritania, Marabt al-Hajj, Marabt al-Haddamin, Marabt Abdullah, Marabt Ahmed Fal. There's a position of my teachers in the Emirates. Obviously, you have the modern position of calculating, and that's now what ISNA, if you're from the United States, goes by. Unlike being in the United States, we, like the Arab man who arrived in New York, and he asked, he was driving his car, he saw a parking space, and he asked this American guy, "Can I bark here?" And the American guy said, "Hey man, it's a free country, you can bark wherever you want." So that is, that's the United States. You can fast with ISNA, or you can choose not to fast with ISNA. When you're in a Muslim country, you should fast with the people. And so in Turkey, for them, tomorrow is Ramadan. We're in Turkey. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. Obey Allah and His Messenger and those who are in authority over you. And right now, we came into this country with visas, and the government of Turkey is in authority over us. And that's the reality. That's a hukm shara'i. We can't disobey their laws. We can't dismiss their laws. We are bound by their laws as long as we're in their country. And so that is my bit. For those of you who, and some of my teachers are like this, you can fast nafila if you don't feel that it's cited, but I would still fast nafila. It's not prohibited to fast on what's called Yom HaShak if you're not fasting to guard about whether or not it's Ramadan. So if you just do it as a nafila, it's a valid nafila fast. And fasting in Rajab is good. And Sha'ban, Rajab and Sha'ban. صيام شهر رمضان وجب في رجب شعبان صوم ندب, Ibn Ashur says. So we should all fast tomorrow with the Turkish people. And like I said, if you're a staunch moonsider, you can make an intention for nafila if it hasn't been cited where you accept its citing, whether it's a universal like the Hanafi madhab or a local citing like some of the most of the Malikis and most of the Shafi'is. So, but that's my advice. Any questions? Any answers? Go ahead.
Actually, unfortunately, we don't have time for questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
I'm sorry.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك